thought I knew what love was. I thought forever was something you could hold in two hands and protect with a promise. I gave my whole heart to someone who swore I was their everything. I memorized their voice, trusted their silence, and built my world around their smile. And for a while I was happy. I believed love was enough. But love has a way of testing you. It whispers doubts at night, it hides clues in the smallest places, and it asks, without warning, how much truth you're willing to face. The first time I felt it, it was nothing more than a vibration on the phone in the middle of dinner. A quick smile, a glance down, a "don't worry, it's just work." I wanted to believe that, I needed to believe that, so I did, but the seed of suspicion had been planted, and my heart was no longer at peace. Then came the late nights. The traffic was too much. The meetings ran long. The way hugs became shorter, kisses became lighter, and eye contact began to feel like a favor instead of a habit. My friends told me, maybe you're imagining things, maybe you're just insecure. But insecurities don't invent lipstick stains on a collar. Insecurities don't explain why a voice drops lower when a certain name comes up. Insecurities don't lie, people do. I remember the night everything broke. I had cooked, I had waited, I had prayed that maybe today would be different. The food went cold, my calls went unanswered. Something in me snapped. I left the house, heart pounding, hands shaking, driving with tears I couldn't even wipe away. I told myself, if I'm wrong, I'll apologize. If I'm wrong, I'll beg for forgiveness. But I wasn't wrong. When I parked across the street and saw them through the window, laughing, holding hands, touching each other like I never existed, my soul cracked in half. The person who swore they loved me was writing love letters in someone else's skin. I didn't storm in, I didn't scream, I didn't fight. I just sat there in my car, invisible, watching the love I thought was mine play out as a performance for someone else. Do you know what betrayal feels like? It's not fire, it's ice. It's the slow freezing of every memory, every kiss, every promise. It's the silence in your chest when your heart refuses to beat because it can't decide whether to break or to stop altogether. And that night, I learned something painful but powerful. Sometimes the person you would take a bullet for is the one pulling the trigger. Sometimes the greatest thief of your joy wears the face of the one you trusted most. And sometimes, love doesn't end with goodbye. It ends with a truth you can never unsee. I used to think love was something solid, something you could hold onto like a hand that never lets go. That's what I thought the first time I met her. Her laugh was the kind that made the air lighter, and her eyes, God, her eyes carried a kind of truth I didn't know how to doubt. I was 23, broke, working a job that barely paid for bus fare, and yet when she smiled at me, I felt rich in a way I hadn't known was possible. She was studying at the time, a year younger than me, full of energy, full of life, and for reasons I'll never understand, she looked at me like I was more than what I had. She looked at me like I was enough. We met at a mutual friend's birthday. I was supposed to be there. I almost didn't go because I didn't even have a proper shirt to wear. But something pushed me out of the door that night. She was sitting in the corner, sipping a soft drink, looking like she belonged in another world entirely. I don't know how I found the courage, but I walked over and made a joke about how out of place I felt. She laughed. That laugh changed everything. We talked for hours that night, and by the end I had her number. The next day I couldn't stop staring at my phone, waiting for her reply. When it came, it felt like winning the lottery. Soon we were talking every day, sending long messages at night, falling asleep mid-conversation but waking up eager to continue where we left off. The connection was instant, undeniable, like we had known each other in another life. I remember our first date. I couldn't afford a fancy restaurant, so I took her to a small cafe by the roadside. I was nervous, embarrassed even that I couldn't give her more. But she looked around, smiled and said, "This is perfect." And she meant it. She made me feel like I didn't need to be rich to deserve her. All I had to be was honest. That night, walking her home, she slipped her hand into mine. My heart almost exploded from the simple weight of her fingers interlacing with mine. The months that followed were the best of my life. We went everywhere together, even if everywhere meant just sitting at the park with roasted corn or walking aimlessly down streets, laughing about nothing. She made the world feel softer. I introduced her to my mother, and the way they bonded made me believe this was it. This was the woman I'd marry. She promised me forever, and I believed her. When she said, "It's you and me against the world," I held onto those words like scripture. But forever has a way of cracking in silence. The first time I noticed something was wrong, it was small. A message came through on her phone, late at night while we were together. She smiled when she saw it, then quickly placed the phone face down. I didn't ask. I told myself I trusted her. But a shadow entered my heart that night, a question I couldn't silence. Who was that? After that, little things started to change. Our calls grew shorter, the texts less frequent. When we were together, she seemed distracted, her eyes drifting elsewhere, her laugh delayed like her mind was far away. She started going out more, saying she was busy with schoolwork, group projects, meetings. At first I accepted it, but the excuses began to sound rehearsed, too polished, like lines from a script. I tried to dismiss the feeling. I told myself I was overthinking, being insecure. I remembered all the promises she made and clung to them like a lifeline. But my heart knew. Love has a way of detecting lies before the mind admits them. The first time I confronted her, it wasn't even a confrontation. I just asked casually, "You've been busy lately. Is everything okay?" She smiled, that same disarming smile that hooked me from the beginning, and said, "Of course, don't worry so much." She kissed me, and for a moment I believed her. For a moment I convinced myself the problem was me, that I was paranoid, that I needed to trust more. But the signs kept coming. She would step outside to take calls. She started locking her phone. She changed her passwords. She used to tell me everything, what she ate for lunch, who she bumped into on the street. But now she guarded her words like secrets too precious to share. I remember the night she told me she couldn't see me because she was working late on a project. Something in me refused to sit still. I called a friend of mine who also studied at her school. He told me there was no project that night. My chest tightened. I didn't tell him more. I just thanked him, hung up, and sat in the dark with my phone in my hand, waiting for her to call, waiting for her to explain. She didn't. The next day when I asked about it, she laughed it off. "Oh, maybe he didn't know," she said casually. Her calmness unsettled me more than if she had gotten defensive. It was the kind of calmness that came from practice, from lying so well it felt like truth. I tried to bury the suspicion, but it grew roots. I started noticing the perfume on her clothes wasn't the one she usually wore. I started noticing how she would say she was too tired to see me, but then post pictures of herself smiling with friends. I started noticing how she never said, "I love you" first anymore. The worst part was the silence, the distance. She was still there, still in my life, but she was no longer with me. I could feel it in the way her hand rested in mine like an obligation instead of a desire. I could feel it in the way her eyes darted away when I searched them too long. I could feel it in the way her lips brushed against mine like they were rehearsing a lie instead of sealing a promise. Every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between trust and doubt, love and suspicion. My friends told me, maybe you're imagining things, maybe she's just busy. But insecurities don't invent lipstick stains. Insecurities don't explain late-night phone calls that end the moment you walk into the room. Insecurities don't keep you awake with the gnawing certainty that the person you love is slowly slipping away. And yet I stayed. I stayed because I loved her more than I loved my own peace. I stayed because I thought love meant enduring, forgiving, believing. I stayed because I remembered the girl who laughed with me in a roadside cafe and told me I was enough. I stayed because I wanted that girl back, even as she became a stranger in my arms. I didn't know it then, but the real betrayal hadn't even begun. What I was feeling was just the prelude, the quiet cracking of glass before it shatters completely. I remember the night it all broke. Not suddenly, not with a scream or a slammed door, but with the quiet precision of a knife sliding between ribs. It was a Friday, and she had told me she was going to spend the evening working on another group project. By then I didn't even ask which subject. I just nodded, pretended to smile, and said, "Good luck." But my heart refused to stay quiet that night. Something about the way she avoided my eyes when she said it, the way she held her bag a little too tightly, the way her lips hesitated before kissing me goodbye, it all screamed louder than her words. I sat in my room for an hour, staring at my phone, waiting for her message. None came. My chest felt heavy, like I was carrying a secret I didn't ask for. Finally, I grabbed my keys and left. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but my feet knew better than my brain. They carried me to her campus, then past it, down streets I didn't even know I remembered. I was half praying I wouldn't find anything, half preparing to die inside if I did. I saw her before she saw me. She was standing outside a restaurant, laughing, her hair tied back, her dress the one she always saved for special occasions. She looked beautiful, so beautiful that for a second I forgot why I was there. But then he appeared. A tall man, confident, sliding his arm around her waist like it belonged there. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She leaned into him, smiling up at him the way she used to smile at me. My world stopped. The cars passing by, the noise of the city, the people walking around, all of it blurred until there was only her, standing there with someone else's arm around her. My first instinct was to rush forward, to demand answers, to drag her away. But my body wouldn't move. I stood frozen, like an invisible witness to my own heartbreak. They went inside, holding hands. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Inside the restaurant, I watched them from a corner. She was laughing, touching his arm, gazing into his eyes with a softness that used to be mine. He leaned closer, whispering something that made her blush. That blush was the final nail. It wasn't a fling. It wasn't a mistake. It was intimacy, familiarity, comfort, the kind of things you only share when you've given someone more than your body. I left before the food even arrived. I stumbled into the night air, gasping for breath like I'd been punched in the lungs. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't care who saw. I walked aimlessly for hours, my mind replaying the scene over and over, each time cutting deeper. By the time I got home, I was hollow. I sat on the floor in the dark, phone in my hand, waiting for her to call. She didn't. The next morning, she texted as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, love, hope you slept well." I stared at the message, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to reply the way I always did, to pretend nothing had changed, to cling to the illusion. But another part of me, the part bleeding too much to ignore, wanted to scream. When we met that evening, I tried to act normal. I wanted her to confess on her own. I wanted her to feel guilty enough to tell me the truth. But she didn't. She smiled, hugged me, asked about my day, like the man from last night never existed. I couldn't take it anymore. "Who is he?" I asked suddenly. The words dropped like a stone between us. She froze. For the first time, her mask cracked. She looked at me, her eyes wide, her lips parting as if to deny it, but nothing came out. Finally, she whispered, "What are you talking about?" "I saw you," I said. My voice was shaking, but the words were steady. "At the restaurant, with him. Don't lie to me, I saw everything." Her face drained of color. She tried to speak, stammering half-formed excuses, but I shook my head. Please don't insult me with lies, just tell me the truth." There was a long silence. Then she sighed, looked down and whispered, "It's not what you think." Those words cut deeper than any confession could. Not what I think, then what was it? A cousin, a coworker, a ghost I imagined. I laughed bitterly, a sound that didn't even sound human. "Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I didn't see the way you looked at him? The way he touched you? The way you leaned into him like he was home?" Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't move me. I had cried enough for both of us. Finally, she admitted, "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to. I still love you." Love me? Those words were salt in an open wound. How could she say she loved me while giving herself to someone else? I stood up, my body shaking. "No," I said. "You don't love me. You love what I gave you. My trust, my time, my heart. And you threw it away." I walked out that night, but walking away didn't mean I left the pain behind. It followed me home, curled up beside me in bed, whispered in my ear when I tried to sleep. I stopped eating. I stopped laughing. I stopped being me. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, begging me to come back, explaining it all away. Sometimes it was. She called, she cried, she begged for forgiveness. But her words felt empty now, like echoes in a hollow room. I wanted to believe her, but the image of her with him replayed every time I closed my eyes. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing that while I had been planning a future with her, she had been building a secret world with someone else. All the little changes, the late nights, the guarded phone, they weren't random. They were bricks in a house where I wasn't welcome. That realization crushed me. People say heartbreak feels like dying. They're wrong. Dying would have been easier. Heartbreak is living with a hole in your chest, a wound that refuses to close, a ghost that haunts you even in daylight. For weeks I drifted. I stopped answering friends' calls. I stopped showing up to work on time. I couldn't focus on anything. I would sit for hours staring at the wall, replaying every memory, every smile, every kiss, wondering how many of them had been lies. Did she love me at all, or was I just a placeholder until he came along? The confrontation didn't end it. We drifted apart slowly, painfully. She tried to hold on, to convince me it was just a mistake, that she wanted me, not him. But the trust was gone. And without trust, love is just a corpse we keep dressing up, pretending it's alive. The day we finally ended things, it was quiet. No shouting, no drama. Just two people sitting across from each other, too broken to keep pretending. She cried. I didn't. My tears had dried up long before. I just sat there, staring at the girl who once made me believe in forever, wondering how something so beautiful could turn so ugly. When I walked away that day, I thought the worst was over. I thought the betrayal was behind me, but I was wrong. The deepest wound was yet to come, not from her body, but from her words. From the things she told him about me. From the secrets she shared that were supposed to be ours. That was the real betrayal, the theft of my dignity, my trust, my story. But that I would discover later. For now, I was just a man with a broken heart, carrying a weight too heavy for his chest, trying to survive one day at a time. After the breakup, I thought the silence would heal me. I thought that if I stopped seeing her, stopped hearing her voice, stopped scrolling through old pictures of us, the pain would eventually fade. But silence doesn't heal betrayal. It amplifies it. In the quiet, I could hear the echo of everything she said to him, everything she hid from me, everything I never saw coming. At first, I tried to cut her off completely. I deleted her number, blocked her on social media, threw away the small gifts she gave me. But love isn't erased by blocking. Love lingers in habits. I would wake up and still check my phone for her good morning text. I would see something funny online and instinctively want to send it to her before remembering I couldn't. Even my dreams betrayed me. I would see her there, smiling, reaching for me, only to wake up and feel the ache of emptiness. I thought the worst was over, but then the whispers started. Friends of friends, people who barely knew me, began to look at me with pity. One night, a mutual friend pulled me aside. He hesitated, then said, "Bro, there are things you need to know." I didn't want to hear it. My heart screamed at me to walk away, to leave the wounds alone. But my pride forced me to listen. He told me that she hadn't just cheated with him. She had talked to him about me, about us, about things that were supposed to stay between lovers. She told him my struggles, my insecurities, my fears, the secrets I had whispered to her in confidence when I thought she was my safe place. And worse, she laughed about them. She mocked me, painting me as weak, as naive, as a fool who had no idea she was living two lives. I felt the ground vanish beneath me. It was one thing to lose her body. It was another to lose my dignity. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had stolen my story and handed it to someone else to laugh at. The thought of him knowing things about me that I had never shared with anyone else, the thought of her using my own vulnerabilities as entertainment, broke me in a way I can't explain. I tried to act strong in front of my friend, but the moment I got home, I collapsed. I cried like a child, loud and raw, fists pounding the floor, chest aching. I kept asking myself, why wasn't I enough? Why did she give my heart to someone else? I hated her. I loved her. I hated myself for still loving her. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I stopped answering calls. I stopped eating. My clothes hung looser, my eyes sank deeper, my laughter disappeared. People started to notice. At work, I was just a shadow, doing the bare minimum to get by. My mother asked if I was okay. I lied. How could I tell her that the girl she welcomed into her home had shredded me into pieces? The humiliation wasn't just private anymore. It spread. People whispered behind my back. Some pitied me, some mocked me, some even said I should have seen it coming. I felt naked in front of the world, exposed, stripped of pride. One night I saw her by accident. She was with him. They were walking down the street, holding hands, laughing. She looked happy, carefree, as if I had never existed. I froze in place, watching them pass by. She glanced at me for a split second. Our eyes met, and do you know what I saw in her eyes? Not guilt, not regret, just indifference. Like I was a stranger she had once known but long forgotten. That moment shattered what little I had left. I went home and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the man looking back. My eyes were hollow, my shoulders slumped, my face tired. I looked like a man defeated, a man broken beyond repair. For the first time in my life, I wondered if I would ever recover. But here's the strange thing about hitting rock bottom. You either stay there or you find a way to push back. For weeks I lingered at the bottom, drowning in self-pity, hating myself for being weak. But then something inside me shifted. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was survival instinct, maybe it was the voice of every humiliation I'd ever swallowed. I realized that as long as I let her betrayal define me, she would keep winning. I couldn't give her that power. I started small. I forced myself out of bed earlier. I began running in the mornings, letting the sweat burn out the poison in my chest. I started eating properly again, taking care of my body, shaving, dressing better. At first it felt fake, like I was just pretending to be okay. But slowly, the pretending turned into becoming. I poured myself into work. I stayed late, volunteered for projects, learned new skills. Every night when the memories came back to haunt me, I used them as fuel. Let this pain build me, I whispered to myself. And it did. It hardened me, sharpened me, gave me a fire I had never felt before. The more I improved, the less I thought about her. The less I thought about him. They became background noise in the story of my life, no longer the main characters. I was the main character now. And though I was still broken, I was learning how to rebuild. But poetic justice wasn't far away, because life has a way of circling back, of forcing people to face the consequences of what they've sown. I didn't know it then, but karma was already preparing her stage. I didn't realize how much I had changed until people started pointing it out. One morning, after months of dragging myself through the pain, a colleague looked at me and said, "You're different now, stronger." I smiled, not because I felt strong, but because I realized I wasn't the same man who once cried on the floor over her. Something had shifted. The pain hadn't disappeared, it had become fuel. I worked harder than I ever had before. Late nights that used to be filled with replaying her betrayal were now filled with building something of my own. I climbed faster than anyone expected. Projects that others avoided, I took on. Challenges that scared me before, I welcomed. Every success, no matter how small, felt like stitching back a piece of myself. And with success came confidence. I started standing taller, speaking louder, looking people in the eyes again. My laughter returned, though it wasn't the careless laughter of the past. It was heavier, richer, forged from scars. People noticed. Friends who had drifted away during my dark days came back, surprised at my transformation. Even strangers could feel it. There's something about resilience that radiates without words. Then one evening, karma knocked softly on my door. Not literally, but in the form of news. A mutual friend mentioned casually, "Have you heard about her? Things aren't going so well." I didn't ask for details at first. I didn't want to care, but curiosity is a stubborn thing. Eventually, I found out. The man she left me for, the one she betrayed me with, had betrayed her too. Stories began circulating about how he had other women, how he lied as easily as he breathed, how the same smile that once lured her had now turned on her. She had left me thinking she was upgrading, stepping into a better love, but all she found was a mirror of her own betrayal. She had chosen a man who treated loyalty like a game, and in the end, she was just another player who lost. When I heard it, I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just sat quietly, letting the weight of it settle. There was no joy in her downfall, only a strange kind of closure. Life had given her back what she gave me, not because I wished it, but because betrayal carries its own punishment. Months later, our paths crossed unexpectedly. I was at a cafe working on my laptop when I looked up and saw her walk in. My heart didn't leap the way it once did. It didn't break either. It just steadied. She saw me, froze, then walked over hesitantly. "Hi," she said softly, almost like she wasn't sure if she had the right. I nodded, "Hi." She looked at me for a long moment, eyes searching my face for something, anger maybe, or pain. But all she found was calm. She sat down without asking, her hands trembling slightly. "You look different," she whispered. "I am," I replied simply. There was silence, then she said the words I had once begged to hear, "I'm sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't the girl I fell in love with. She looked older, not in years but in spirit. There was a tiredness in her eyes, the kind that comes from carrying regrets. "I know," I said quietly, "but it's too late." Tears filled her eyes. She reached across the table, but I pulled back gently. "You made your choice," I continued. "And so did I. I chose to survive. I chose to become someone stronger, and I can't go back to who I was." She broke down then, whispering apologies, trying to explain, trying to rewrite the past. But I didn't need explanations anymore. The story was finished. The chapter closed. I let her speak, let her pour out her regret, but my heart stayed steady. When she finally left, I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the window. For the first time, I felt free, truly free. Not because she had apologized, not because karma had punished her, but because I had built a life where her betrayal no longer defined me. I learned then that closure doesn't come from the one who broke you. It comes from the one you become after. Years have passed since then, and when I look back, I don't see just betrayal. I see transformation. I see a man who was shattered but refused to stay broken. I see someone who turned pain into power, humiliation into resilience, loss into growth. And if you're listening to me now, if you're carrying the weight of betrayal in your own chest, hear me. It will not kill you. It will not define you. It will wound you, yes. It will scar you. But those scars can become your armor if you let them. One day you will look back at the person who broke you and realize they were just a lesson, not a destiny. She was my first great love. She was also my first great betrayal. And now she is nothing more than a story I tell, not with bitterness, not with tears, but with gratitude. Because without her, I would never have discovered the strength that was sleeping inside me all along. Betrayal didn't end me, it birthed me, and that is the truth I carry with me forever.